understand what? Was I speaking too fast? A little bit. So you should have put your hand out. So slow down.
It's okay.
We're gonna come back now. We're just gonna go around and we can definitely pick up. Are we okay, Santino? Yeah? Okay, you could just put it down, Santino. It's cool. Like, it's fine there anyways. So obviously, we're really thankful for your presentation, and we're just gonna pick up on perhaps segments that weren't covered, and obviously we can relay back. We have the hour. Anybody want to go first in perhaps engaging with the speaker on a particular talking point, or even sharing their thoughts on the topic?
Yes. Yeah, well, you said that the European slave trade, it wasn't like based on Christianity, but like the British, when the British did the slave trade, they used the Bible to justify the slave trade.
Yeah.
Did they not?
Yeah. No. Well, maybe I didn't explain myself properly. It was based on Christianity, but what I'm saying is I wouldn't say because of excuse me, because of the practice of some Christians, I wouldn't ascribe that to Christianity. There's a difference. So so they use the curse of Ham story incorrectly to justify the enslavement of black Africans. Now, if you read the curse of Ham story in the Bible in Genesis, it doesn't mention that Noah enslaved Ham and his descendants with blackness, but some you could say creative interpreters, they misinterpret that to say he enslaved them with blackness and slavery. So this idea that black people are should be enslaved by Europeans and using the Bible to justify it, if you actually read the Bible, it doesn't justify that. But people interpreted it to suit their own means to enslave black people. Now, again, because they justified, they use the Bible to justify their action, I wouldn't ascribe it to Christianity. Because I would say Christianity is free from that, the same way I would argue that Islam is free from some of the oppression which happened to the black Africans at the hands of Arab Muslims. I'm not going to say that they're not Muslims, because do you understand? Again, that's why I'm saying that I wouldn't ascribe that to Christianity, not to say that they wasn't Christians.
But yeah, the Hadiths though,
right,
they do have racism in it.
Sorry?
The Hadiths have racism.
Which
That's
Hadiths?
what you're saying.
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question and said that. And that was one of the reasons why I wrote my first book of dealing with the whole concept of anti-black racism in Islamic history and in some Islamic literature. Now, if you can give me some of the hadiths, because some of them are fabricated, and that's what not many people are aware of. So there's some hadiths which hadith is a prophetic tradition where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have said there's no good in black people or the Zanj. When they steal, they fornicate. When they're hungry, they steal, and when they're satiated, they fornicate. Now that hadith, even though it's widely circulated among some Muslim communities, it's fabricated. He didn't say that. So if you're just picking up a book by some people who are attacking Islam and said, so that's one hadith, right?
Is that quite dangerous?
So that's why, again, when we're speaking, and again, I'm glad you said that, but it's important for you, if you're, say you've made an accusation, I would say, okay, bring that.
I'm not making.
No, okay, but you've said that. You said the hadiths are racist.
Yeah, I said. Yeah.
Now I'm saying that. I'm not meaning to be rude or anything, but I'm saying that. Okay, bring me in a hadith where it is racist.
I see.
And then it's either, because I've gone through a number of them. If you can show me one that is racist, then I will hold my hand up. But I haven't seen them, because most of them they're either fabricated or it's interpretation. For example, there's a hadith which says that obey your ruler even if he's an Ethiopian with a raisin head, right? Now some people have taken that hadith to say, oh, this is the Prophet Muhammad, or this is Islam disparaging black people. Now if you read the interpretation of that, you have to understand again the context. Now the Arabs at the time, even though they had relations with these East Africans, they used to look, you can say the position of the Arabs, especially the Arab aristocrats, they will look down upon an East African or black African, right? Because again, not because they're black, but in terms of understanding their tribe. Yeah? You with me?
Yeah.
Right? Now, by the Prophet saying, obey your ruler, even if, because he's using, again, this comes to understand Arabic, he used even if it's like a poor Ethiopian. He's not saying that there's something inherently wrong with being a poor Ethiopian or poor black person. He's saying even if it's someone that you don't expect, and the purpose of that hadith is to emphasize the importance of obeying people in power, because you don't want like fitna, you don't want discord, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's understand the context. It's not saying that something's inherently wrong with black people. Do you understand? I'm getting it. So there's a number of these hadiths, and again, I'm not trying to attack you or anything like that.
Okay.
There's a number of these hadiths which people assume are racist. Number one, because they haven't understood the context, or they're reading it with a racialized contemporary mind, and that's why it's important, like I tried to do in the beginning, understanding how people use terms then. Do you understand? I'm getting that. So but again, if you do find the one that had, please let me know, but I guarantee you it's either fabricated or it's the context, like, which doesn't actually mean which it looks like it means if you're reading it from a 21st century lens in a racialized world. And that's why I think it's important that when we're reading historic texts, we need to understand how they use words then, not how we understand words, because we're going to do injustice to them and ultimately to other people when we're propagating some of these like ideas.
No, I wasn't reading anything. It's just
It was just, I think you were just basically bringing up a point that maybe has been made in certain circles or whatever.
yes.
Yeah, people make those, but again, and this is where it's important for us to educate ourselves and not understand how people the past. Because again, I'm trying to give examples of only 50 years ago how people use words differently, and how words change over a period of time, and even nowadays.
Yeah.
And that's why I gave the example of like in Jay-Z's song. So you can hear it like an African American rapper that might say he believes in Allah. Now, what he means by Allah, he's talking about himself. Do you understand what I'm getting at? So that's why it's important that you understand how people use words and what they mean by certain words. And some of these words do change over time. So if you're just picking up a book, particularly a historic book, and you're understanding how people use those words, then you're going to misinterpret things, right?
And also, just on the whole religious conversation, whilst we're at it, the idea, there's certain sort of descriptions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, having African features, no? And the fact that there are prophets that are black within Islam, so Prophet Musa and so on. If you could just touch on that a little bit.
Okay, so there's, like in Islamic tradition, I mean, in terms of how many prophets there are, there's nothing that clearly is by name. There's between like 25 to 27 mentioned in name in the Quran. But in Hadith literature, there's a report which suggests that there's 124,000 prophets. Some of those are, so a prophet is someone who's sent to his people to inform people about, the message, meaning that there's only one God and to follow the messengership of that particular prophet. Now there are prophets sent to Indian people, there's prophets sent to black people, to all people, right? But we only know, like I said, either 25 to 27 mentioned by name in the Quran, but there's some reports that even some of the prophets that were mentioned in the Quran, some of them are said to be black Africans, like Luqman, and the prophet of the people of the day. So this idea that, and I think it's important, is that this idea that Islam is somewhat anti-African, anti-black. Islam is not for black people. Islam is solely for black people. Sorry, it's not solely for Arabs. It's not solely for white people. It's from Islam perspective for everyone, right? But again, in terms of, or like the point you mentioned about like Musa having like reported to have like kinky hair, or I mean the idea of the prophet. I mean my only issue is because as much as yes you want to talk about or fight anti-blackness, you can go to one extreme and then start saying, which I think is very dangerous, and start saying everyone is black in Islam. And yes, we know there's traditions which state that from Islam perspective that the first person on this son Adam is black, from the word Adam, which means like dark brown, and Hawa means dark or like black. But even if they were black, from Islam perspective, that's irrelevant. From an Islamic perspective, and that's something which even Malcom was stressing, that when he was talking about like race, again this is Muslim Malcom, that it's incidental to the person, and that's something which even as we as black, brown people, or however you want to self-identify, you don't want to go to one extreme where you're just going to start speaking about how white people are just like evil and this, that and the other because of the injustices that some, not all white people have done. Do you understand? So it's about trying to be balanced, and it's quite a difficult ground to tread on, because again you want to empower black people, brown people, but at the same time you can then fall into the trap which many people have of just disparaging or casting aspersion upon white people because of some practices which some white people have, and saying that's a reflection of the whole kind of race and ethnicity.
What about Christianity's link with colonialism and missionary sort of movements that were partaking, and their sort of oppression, on subjugating black and brown people?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just saying that I think that Christianity does have a certain colonial history, and although even Arabs have obviously had inquisitions and so on.
But I just think one thing we have to be careful of is distinguishing between the religion and the people who adhere to the religion or claim to adhere to the religion. So, like you said, we know Christianity has there's this link with colonialism, but are we now saying that because of what a number of colonialists did in the name of Christianity, that's a reflection of Christianity?
Was Christianity indigenous to Africa?
Well, there's recently.
Is that conversation?
Well, there is that conversation.
And how did it come to the African people?
But you know what?
In what manner?
I recently went to a talk with Professor Anthony Riddy.
Because I don't know how useful it is also to be an apologist for, say, Christian missionaries.
No, I'm not being an apologist. No, I'm not being. What I'm trying to say is like, so for example, this idea of, yes, we know that Christianity, in terms of Christian history, in terms of like what a number of Christian missionaries did to Black Africans, we know about that. But one thing which, again, I wasn't really aware of, which when I went to this talk and Professor Anthony Riddy, he was talking about Black theology, and again from a Christian perspective, and he was talking about like Saint Augustine. He's an African. Now he was talking about even within the Christian world, they don't talk about that. They try to like whiten him. They whitewash him. Now he's celebrated, but they don't talk about his Africanness. Do you understand? This was way before colonialism. So there is African and Black theologians who are celebrating Christianity, but they don't talk about their Africanness or their Blackness.
But isn't that sort
do you understand? So what I'm saying, if we're going to ascribe colonialism to Christianity because of what some Christian missionaries did, then why don't we also ascribe what like the great works of Black and African theologians to Christianity and say that's why it's a quote unquote African religion? Do you understand what I'm getting at? And I mean, my issue with this whole idea of, because something didn't originate from a place it's not a quote unquote African religion, by that logic then Islam is not an African religion. And that's what I don't see an Arab.
But that is a genuine position that is held by like obviously Pan-Africanists.
Yeah, and that's why what I wanted to talk about, that this idea that, and even when we're talking about Africa, the continent, some people include the Arabian Peninsula within Africa. They say that's part of Africa. Again, that's some people's interpretation. And even the word Africa is derived from Ifriqiya, which is a city in Tunisia. Now, the people in Tunisia, again, in terms of understanding Blackness, are they quote unquote Black? Do you understand what I'm getting at? So you're going to go into all of these, who is Black and then who is real African, because the ironic thing is, although a lot of North Africans do not consider themselves to be African because they see Africa as like sub-Saharan Africa. Africa derived from a word which is a city in North Africa. And it was from a European person that named it Africa. So it's like, okay, me call myself an African, I'm basically like the son of a white man. Did you understand what I'm getting at? So this, as much as this can sound kind of contradictory, I'm talking about Blackness and the importance of like Black empowerment, but then at the same time I'm talking about that it's irrelevant, and that's something that, again, if you read or listen to the speeches towards the last year of Malcolm's life, it sounded like a lot of what he was saying previously was important, but at the same time he was defending what he was saying, if that makes sense. It sounds contradictory, but it's not in a sense if you look at it from a position of, no, because he understands the plight of Black people, especially in America, so he's addressing it and trying to change their mindset. So he has to talk about the importance of Black people and the contributions Black people have made, but ultimately he's saying your Blackness is not what makes you a better person.
And also,
do you understand what I'm getting at? And so again, like I said earlier, it's quite a dangerous line because you can go to one extreme or the other.
So it's just best to take a nuanced position.
Yeah, it's best to take a nuanced position and just be objective. Try and be will biased, don't get me wrong, but try and be objective. And the same way when we say things, particularly about Europeans and things like that, try and let's in the other way. If you was in their position, is it fair if they were to say the same thing about your religious beliefs or your ethnic tribe? Do you understand? And you probably wouldn't like it, but generally when you're not in a position of power, you can always attack those in power, even if your argument is not justified. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
I
I
mean,
think you can get away. It's easier to get away with, even if it's not justified. I think that's something that we need to kind of be careful of. The same as a man, I'll be honest, right? I can hear. Obviously, I'm a man, so I'm in a position of privilege naturally over women, generally in society. So when I hear a woman complain about maybe like sexual harassment, these type of things, because I don't identify with it because it's not my experience, I can dismiss it. It's easy for me to dismiss it, but it takes time for me to actually listen and let me understand where she's coming from. And the same, so that's me as a man. I can understand that. That's why I can not agree, but I can understand why a number of like maybe white or Europeans, they find it difficult to understand the position of like oppressed groups, whether they're black, Muslim, African, whatever.
but I don't think that when you're having these conversations, there should be any appeasement of those kind of, because as Malcolm, he was unapologetic in his message, and he obviously was able to effectively deliver.
And he wasn't a pacifist, which I think is important, which I didn't get time to talk about.
We're just going to get to the sister here.
Do you have a difference between the Afro? Do you have a difference between the Afrocentrism?
Afrocentrism?
Afrocentrism, yes. I don't know in English. Afrocentrism?
Afrocentrism?
Yeah. Yes, and the Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Do you have the difference between?
Oh yes, that's a good point. I didn't define that. I saw that actually on the train as well. And I was like, oh. Anyway, probably someone can correct me, but my understanding of Pan-Africanist is someone who believes. What's the definition? I should know this because I went to Pan-Africanist school when I was like 9. Is it someone that believes? Can anyone help me out? I'm struggling. It's someone that believes like. Someone that's trying to connect with people of the African diaspora. So, because I'm trying to give a good definition.
I can draw in James here. It would be nice to have like
Can
how
you give
you.
a nice
I think in your segment, did you not touch on perhaps like the? I don't know if it was touched on that session, but if you can kind of just bring in a little bit of how you understand Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
I suppose I saw it. I read it more as like a sort of global position of Africans.
That's it. Yeah.
So like, which included maybe those Africans in the diaspora as well as the indigenous Africans. I suppose the Pan-Africans wasn't just the movement too much.
Yeah, and it's kind of like seeing us all as one people, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a very
the Afrocentricity of Renaissance was more about highlighting the uniqueness of the African or Black experience.
Yeah. So did everyone hear that?
No.
Yeah, can you repeat that again because that was well said.
Sorry. I suppose Pan-Africanism. I suppose I read it as just a global kind of standpoint or a global kind of position of Africans, not just.
Pan-Africanism got anything to do with like one nation, like United States of Africa or anything?
No, but saying that we all like people of African descent, like I mentioned earlier, like the people of Brazil, Cuba, we're all one people, irrespective.
That's my point. I think Stokely Carmichael kind of in a debate between him and Asante was more about kind of emphasise the organisation of Africans.
Yeah.
Not with this kind of overarching view of forming a nation, but more just trying to confront the problems that Africans face all over the world. So it's maybe kind of a stage prior to maybe like the sort of black nationalist ideas.
Yeah.
Because I think Afrocentricity seems less nationalistic and more kind of, I don't know, kind of worldly. Which to say that the uniqueness of African people wasn't couldn't be kind of addressed in Africa. Like the African experiences were unique, whatever.
Okay, so I'm just going to draw. Sorry, can we? Are there any other? James, do you want to ask any questions or any talking points to the speaker?
I'll wait. Somebody else wants to.
Sorry, is there anybody else? Any speaking points? We're gonna come back to this side, but if we can get you, James, first, if you have anything to say, and then I wanted to just bring in a few points that I jotted down.
Well, first, thank you for your talk. And it was just.
Sorry, James, is it a bit cool if you can raise your voice?
Sorry, I'm so to the mic. Yeah, I suppose I just had these thoughts about the kind of distinction between blackness and black life.
Yeah.
I think just kind of an important decision, just let you know. 'Cause I think Malcolm, especially towards the end of his career, after Mecca, where he became more, I don't know, pluralistic, as you could say, in his outlook, and more considerate of the state of Bangladesh, kind of his perception of racism and white people, etc., and black people as well. I think that I think as well. I read the distinction there between how black life could be accessed by anyone, or could be experienced by anyone. That blackness wasn't this kind of otherworldly kind of phenomenon in the world, which had to be kind of objectified, categorized, contained, and had to be structured within already pre-existing apparatuses within society and the economy. But black life was something that was sort of integrated within the fabric of sort of American life, or the experience of black Americans and white Americans as well, which is interesting.